This colored pencil bubble tutorial is super fun and really easy. If you love learning about art, hit that subscribe button and support this public school art teacher's side hustle. I am using Canson black pastel paper. You could even use a piece of black construction paper and Prismacolor Scholar colored pencils, but you use your favorite brand of colored pencils, whatever you have on hand. First, you are going to draw or trace circles. I recommend doing a variety of circles, different sizes that overlap so that your composition is really interesting and dynamic. Go off the edges of your paper and overlap to create lots of depth with your bubbles. Once you're happy with your circles, pick a dominant color to do lots of shading. I'm going to start with blue. I believe this is Copenhagen blue, and I'm using this to kind of fill in the base layer of each of my bubbles. I highly recommend a Google search of bubbles so that you can be inspired by all the vibrant colors. It really is like a spectrum, a prism, or a rainbow. I'm starting mostly with blue and white. Those will be my dominant colors, but as you can see, you could do magenta, you could do green. Bubbles are so much fun because you could play around with as many color combinations as you would like. So I'm just going to go in and fill in a circular motion where I'm putting kind of a darker edge on the left-hand side, and I'm making sure to fill in some areas in the center, but leaving some gaps as well. The thing with colored pencils is you will be layering a lot. So just because you put one layer here, you can always go back and you can blend, you can press down harder, and you can add more layers of lots of different colors. Keep in mind that bubbles are round, so you do want to shade in a circular pattern. I'm using Prismacolor Scholars, which is a really affordable way to use the nice brand of Prismacolor. And I'm going in here with a different blue. It almost looks gray on this black paper. So it's nice, but I'm not sure this color is necessary. So the fun thing about bubbles is you can use whatever colors you like. So test ones you think might work, and then don't be afraid to experiment, and don't be afraid to say, that didn't work, so let's move on to another. Highlights are really important, and white is going to be your best friend if you're using toned paper, especially black like me. So you can see, obviously, black and white are the highest level of contrast, and so blending with that white is really making this bubble stand out. I also love how it blends that blue and it makes it brighter, it makes it a little bit more pastel. So I use white a lot, not only for highlights, but for blending color, especially bubbles, because you're going to be using so many highlights, and it really is going to make your color scheme come to life. So I'm putting a little bit of a smaller highlight on the right-hand side, still filling in kind of in a circular motion. And I know that I'm going to be going back to white and blending with it as I develop the color scheme of each of my bubbles. Let's repeat these steps, and this bubble is off the page, so I only have to do the top. So I'm still shading in a semicircle circular pattern. You'll see I'll go back to different. This is a great artwork to build your skills with colored pencils because you're repeating very simple shapes and very simple shading techniques over and over again. So I drew several bubbles, and so each time I do something to one bubble, I'm going to repeat it to all the bubbles at the same time so I don't get confused about the steps that I did. One thing I definitely want to include is really sharp, crisp highlights within the bubble and also in the space that the bubbles occupy. You can see there's almost like pinpoints of light that float through this image that I found on my Google search. Let's speed things up because I'm going to repeat the exact same steps with this highlight on each of my bubbles. Now, the fun part, I'm going to add a second, more vibrant color. Yellow is my favorite color, so I chose it here, and I also think it's going to work really well because when it blends with that blue, it'll appear green. So it's almost like I get two colors in one with my yellow. Now, this isn't a neon, it's more like a yellow ochre, but feel free to practice and swatch colors from your sets of colored pencils. Every set of colored pencils and every brand will be slightly different. If you're wondering why I'm shading so fast, I sped things up here because I'm adding just a hint of this color. I'm still following that circular motion, but I'm not doing as much white or as much blue as I am with this other color. More colors! I'm choosing purple because I think it works really well with the blue, and I want that really nice prism effect, and since it's the complement to yellow, I thought let's go ahead and add some purple. You can see how it pops really nicely with the white. And I'm gonna do the same step here where I shade in a circular motion that purple, vibrant color that I've selected. I'm making all of my bubbles have the same uniform color scheme, but you could have fun where maybe there's a more violet bubble, maybe there's a more green bubble, and when in doubt, test your color because again, everything's gonna look different depending on the colors you choose and the brands and how they mix with white and the other colors. One trick is to use the side of your colored pencils. And this is great for covering a larger surface faster. And it also creates harmony in your color scheme because this more electric green is kind of tying together all the colors that I've used before. You can then go back and press down with the point to get a more vibrant effect. And again, blending on top of white will make that color pop even more. So let's go back to white. I want to bring some of these bubbles with a little bit more detail. I want to make them look a little bit more round. I do think if I would have slowed down and found objects to trace, or if you have, just an easier way to make your circles, you won't have to go back and try and make the form of it perfectly circular. But you do you and whatever works best. But I do like going back to the very black of the paper and pressing down as hard as I can to create a beautiful circular highlight. I'm not circularing, that's a hard thing to say. I'm not putting like a harsh circle around the whole thing. I want certain moments of that edge to have a really like screaming highlight that contrasts so well against the black background. I'm going to speed things up here because as always, I'm doing the same treatment of color, the same highlights on each bubble so I kind of get in a groove and get in a rhythm. You can also play with value and depth to make your bubbles look closer and farther away, which is a really fun trick. So if you want your bubbles to look close, if you make them really light in color, they'll look like they're coming closer. And if you leave some of them darker, especially the ones that are overlapping another one, for example, this top left, that's going to make it look like it's receding or behind the bubble that's a little bit more bright. So that's a fun trick you can play with shading so that your bubbles have overlap and have some depth within them. Since I'm still thinking white and highlights, I'm going to add these fun like little sparkly areas of light, and I'm going to blend with that yellow to make the background have a little bit more activity going on. So there's not just highlights in the bubble, but also the space around them, like there's light hitting them. So I'm not going to neglect the background, but I am going to add more color. So I picked this fuchsia. I think it works well because it's similar to that purple that I first used, but it's a little bit more pink. So it gives a little bit more variety to my color scheme while staying harmonious. And again, you do as many colors as you would like, mix and match, use every dang color in your set if you want to, or keep it simple and minimal. It's completely up to you, whatever your particular goals are for this artwork and this experience making this colored pencil bubble artwork. Thank you so much for sticking around and making art with me. And if you're interested in more colored pencil tutorials, check these out. Find me on Instagram at thatartteacher_Machado to see what my students are up to in my classroom. And my website, thatartteacher.com, has all of my free resources for teachers and for making art at home.